Our reading for this evening is Isaiah 35, verses 1 through 10. The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and blossom. Like the crocus it shall blossom abundantly, and rejoice with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given to it, the majesty of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of the Lord, the majesty of our God. Strengthen the weak hands and make firm the feeble knees. Say to those who are of fearful heart, be strong, do not fear. Here is your God. He will come with vengeance, with terrible recompense. He will come and save you. Then the eyes of the blind shall be open, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the speechless sing for joy. For waters shall break forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. The burning sand shall become a pool, and the thirsty ground springs of water. The haunt of the jackals shall become a swamp. The grass shall become reeds and rushes. A highway shall be there, and it shall be called the Holy Way. The unclean shall not travel on it, for it shall be for God's people. No traveler, not even fools, shall go astray. No lion shall be there, nor shall any ravenous beast come upon it. They shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there. And the ransomed of the Lord shall return, and come to Zion with singing. Everlasting joy shall be upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. Here ends our reading. So the words, the grass shall become reeds and rushes, is good news in this text, but it sparks a bit of an embarrassing memory for me. A few years back, over the summer, I worked at Pioneers Park at the Nature Center on the land management team, and my friend Alyssa also had a job there. And one day, Alyssa and I had been sent out into the prairies that they maintain because we were looking for thistles, because we want to get rid of the thistles if the thistles are in the prairies. There's a certain kind of thistle that we didn't like, so we would cut off the heads and put them in a bag and then uproot it and chop it up into pieces. So we were out there looking for thistles. Unfortunately, we did not notice as the grass became reeds and rushes as we came down a hill into kind of a lowland. And all of a sudden, our utility vehicle was stuck in the mud. We didn't realize that there was just a wetland here in the middle of our pasture that we were supposed to be maintaining. And we had to call our supervisor, who had to get the work truck out and drive it all the way around the pasture to come out and pull us out of the mud. He made fun of us for a while after that. But the problem was too much water. Too much water. Where we were, there was too much water. Some water's good. Water is an interesting thing because sometimes it is giving a drink to a thirsty person saves their life. That's great. Other times, God destroys the world with a giant flood. Water can be a great thing or a terrible thing. And sometimes it depends on your size, because a glass of water, perfect for us, doesn't do anything for an elephant. But it is terrible for an ant. An ant will die in a glass of water. Size counts for a lot when it comes to water. So some things that may be too much water for us, suddenly this land becoming a swamp and a pool that where we get our utility vehicle stuck in, may not be such a bad thing for the land. This text starts by saying the wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. That's not really something we think about very often, land being happy. People are happy, but rocks don't have feelings. Dirt, sand, loam, whatever it is, doesn't have feelings. How can the land be glad? But there is also something beautiful about an ecosystem that is functioning properly. I'm sure all of us have seen this video. It went viral a few years back. If you haven't, I strongly encourage you to look it up. I come back to it every once in a while, and it almost brings me to tears. It's a video about what happened when they reintroduced the wolves to Yellowstone. You'd think that this would impact the population of wolves. And you'd be right. Going from 0 wolves to some wolves is a change. But it changed Yellowstone in many other ways. And one surprising way is because the wolves would hunt large game like elk and deer, those herds stayed out of areas where where they'd be easier to hunt for the wolves. So they stopped staying in the lowlands along the broad areas along the rivers. The presence of the wolves changed the behavior of the big game animals. But that, in turn, because they weren't grazing as much down by the riverbanks, the rivers were able to stabilize because vegetation took root and didn't get uprooted by trampling and overgrazing. So the riverbanks themselves were stabilized because the wolves came back. The presence of wolves stabilized the rivers, made the land happy, the way it was supposed to be. Unfortunately, if it's true that reintroducing wolves to Yellowstone stabilized the rivers, the inverse is also true. It was humans initially who drove the wolves out of Yellowstone. If the rivers lacked stability, we were at least partially to blame. And sometimes the impact we have on the environment is not so subtle as driving wolves away. Sometimes we just, pave paradise to put up a parking lot, for lack of a better phrase. But we destroy the environment to do what we want with it. It has an impact. From the very beginning, humans were entrusted as the stewards of creations. We were there to make the land glad. We were entrusted with securing and protecting the environment that God had created. And somewhere along the way, we messed up. We broke things. And sometimes the water fixes our mistake. God sends water to the thirsty land to restore it. And sometimes that's not good for us. Our size is small enough that we get stuck in the mud, but the land is made glad. The land, which is so much bigger than any of us, is made glad when God restores it. Sometimes it's an inconvenience. Sometimes we have to ask our boss to pull us out. But the good news of this message is that where we have failed to care for the land, where we have failed to be proper stewards of God's earth, God is restoring. Because as much as God is concerned with saving us, God is also concerned with making the dry land glad. Amen.